Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to the video for Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. My name is Ventus SGN. In this Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree build video guide, I'm going to give you an updated build for the Blasphemous Blade. The Blasphemous Blade is a base game greatsword that you get from defeating Rykard and trading in his remembrance in the Round Table Hold. With the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC came a few new items that increase the damage potential of this weapon, along with a few old things, and in this build video, I'm going to show you what I've come up with so that you can try it out for yourself. But really quickly, before I do that, do me a small favor and subscribe to this channel for Elden Ring guides and builds. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. The equipment that I use for this build are as follows. There's the plus 10 Blasphemous Blade. It has attribute scaling of C strength and dexterity and B scaling in faith. To use this weapon, you're required to have at least a 22 in strength, 15 in dexterity, and 21 in faith. The Blasphemous Blade comes with a unique skill called Taker's Flames that allows you to raise the sword and slam it to the ground to let off a forward-facing blast of fire. This attack steals HP from targets hit. It costs 30 FP to use this skill, but whenever you defeat an enemy, some HP is restored as well, making this a perfect weapon for zone clearing, especially when you add a few talismans that increase HP restored. Next is the Erdtree Seal plus 10 for incantations and the Commander's Standard. The Commander's Standard is a halberd with a unique skill called Rallying Standard that raises your attack power and defense. The armor that I'm using for this build is the full Rakshasa set. The Rakshasa armor is a Shadow of the Erdtree DLC armor that increases damage dealt to targets, but also increases damage taken. Talisman for this build that I used in all the clips seen in this video are the Blade of Mercy from the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. This talisman raises attack power after each critical hit. Then there's the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, also from the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. This item enhances attacks with two-handed weapons. Next is the Claw Talisman from the base game to enhance jump attacks. And finally, the Dragon Crest Shield to boost physical damage negation. Other talismans that you could use for this build are the Shard of Alexander, greatly boosts the attack power of skills. Taker's Cameo to restore health after defeating an enemy. The Ritual Sword Talisman to raise attack power when HP is at max. The Ancestral Spirit's Horn to restore FP after defeating an enemy, and the Assassin's Crimson Dagger to restore HP after a critical hit. Now, I purposely left out using the Shard of Alexander in this video in favor of using the Dragon Crest Shield, simply because the Rakshasa armor increases damage taken. Had I wore any other armor, I would have used the Shard of Alexander. The reason being is that the Shard of Alexander only enhances skills, while the Rakshasa armor increases all damage, and other things I use for this build increase the sword's skill damage, which I'll get into in just a minute. For the Mixed Wondrous Physic, I've been using the Flame Shrouding Crack tier to boost fire attacks, and the Stone Barb Crack tier to increase poise damage taken to bosses, making their stance easier to break. For tougher bosses like Gaius, who just ignores Spirit Ashes and only goes after you, I swap out the Stone Barb Crack tier for the Opaline Hard tier to increase damage negation. When it comes to stat placement for this build, this is primarily a Faith Strength build, so both of these should be higher than normal. Strength can be anywhere from 55 to 60, higher if you have the points for it. Faith needs to be just as high so you can do damage with Taker's Flames and other flame spells. My mine in this video is set to 55, and I ran into zero problems with FP, making me think I could have lowered this number to probably 45. The reason being, I didn't really spam Taker's Flame as much as I thought I would, and more so relied on physical attacks because Taker's Flame has a longish animation, and most bosses are not sitting still for it unless you deplete their poise meter and break their stance, or else they're fighting your Spirit Ashes. Dexterity can be at the lowest for the weapon, 15, along with Intelligence and Arcane being at their lowest score. Incantations for this build are Blessing of the Erdtree for healing over time, Golden Vow for enhanced attack and defense, Flame Grant Me Strength for enhanced physical and fire affinity attack power, Black Flame's Protection for physical damage negation, and Protection of the Erdtree for all affinity damage negation except physical. For zone clearing, I use Giant's Flame Take Thee, and for boss fights, I use Flame of the Fell God. Using this build in combat when zone clearing, you can swap out your defensive talisman for the Ancestral Spirit's Horn, a talisman that restores FP when you defeat enemies. This combines with the Blasphemous Blade's natural ability to restore HP when you defeat an enemy, and you get even more when you use the Taker's Cameo talisman. Using Taker's Flames on groups of mobs gives back chunks of HP, but only on enemies that travel on the ground. For airborne enemies or ones on a higher elevation, use Giant's Flame Take Thee. For boss fights, use every buff but save the Commander's Standard buff for last. The buff you get from Rallying Standard only lasts 30 seconds and costs 30 FP to use. So what I've been doing is using all of my buffs and then restoring my FP with a flask, and then use the Rallying Standard in my offhand, making it my main weapon by pressing L2 and triangle on the PlayStation controller when it's equipped in my offhand. Once I use the skill, I return my Erdtree Finger Seal to my offhand and then start the boss fight. After summoning Spirit Ashes for most boss fights, I will use the Taker's Flame skill once because it has an unusually long reach that will affect enemies before they get to within range to attack me. From there, I'll usually rush at a boss and dodge their initial attack to get a jump heavy attack to start working on breaking down their poise meter. Now, the Blasphemous Blade is a greatsword, and as such, it's a great tool for breaking a boss's stance. After about 4 or 5 jumping heavy attacks, or 3 to 4 jump heavies with a full charged heavy attack, a boss's poise meter should be depleted and their stamina broken, giving you the chance to critical attack them. Once you get the crit attack off, the Blade of Mercy Talisman kicks in, giving you a 20% attack power buff to all attacks for 20 seconds, according to Effextra Life's wiki site. After a boss is broken, back up and wait a heartbeat, then use Taker's Flames. The long-reaching distance of the attack deals with every boss's annoying habit of jumping back out of range for further attacks after you crit attack them. Another strategy to use is basically spam the Taker's Flame attack whenever a boss is occupied by your Spirit Ashes. I sometimes even reapplied the Rallying Standard buff a few times when bosses were occupied by the Spirit Ashes. Try this build out and let me know what you think. Alright guys, and that's going to be it for this build video. If you found it helpful, be sure and drop a like. For more builds, head to my channel and browse my playlist for Elden Ring builds. If you have any questions about this or anything else Elden Ring related, drop them down in the comments. My name is Ventus SGN. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Peace out.